Hey everybody, Mr. Quick here. We're going to look today at Eureka Math / Engage New York Math, Module 2, Lesson 19, Greatest Common Factor. Now I'm playing a little bit with the curriculum. They have, if you go strictly by Engage New York Eureka Math, they have Lesson 18 as Least Common Multiple and Greatest Common Factor. And then, let's see, Lesson 19 kind of goes into the Euclidean algorithm, which is basically using long division to find greatest common factor. We've done least common multiple in our last lesson, and today I'm just going to focus on greatest common factor, and we may talk about some other ways to do that in class, but I'm not going to do their lesson 19. We're going to do greatest common factor exclusively as lesson 19. Now, one of the things that I think people find a little confusing, and it's easy to feel that way, is the difference between least common multiple and greatest common factor. Basically, in both, you're taking two numbers and you're finding something that they have in common, right? But in the case of least common multiple, you're finding the smallest number that is a multiple of both of your digits, whereas in greatest common factor, you're looking at two numbers that factor into the number. So let me just give you a quick little example here. We'll go with 24. Our number is going to be 24. If I'm going to find, and I'm going to erase this to make this a little less confusing. If I'm going to find multiples of 24, I don't know why I put that. There we go. Multiples of 24. I'm going to be looking at 24 times 1 is 24. 24 times 2 is 48. 24 times 3 is 72. 24 times 4 would be 96, and so on and so forth, and it would keep going. So least common multiple is if I have another number, let's say 12, we're finding more multiples of that. We go 12, we go 24, and then we say, hey, the least number they have in common as their multiples is 24, so the LCM, least common multiple, would be 24. Now, if I'm looking at factors is something completely different. Factors factor into the number. So they're all the numbers that can be multiplied by another number to equal this number. So 1 times 24, sorry, I clicked the wrong button. 1 times 24 equals 24. So those are both factors of 24. 2 times 12 equals 24. So those are factors of 24. 3 times 8 are factors of 24, right? 3 times 8 equals 24. And 4 times 6 equals 24. So all of these numbers then are factors of 24. All of these numbers over here are multiples. Multiples is multiply. You take the number and you multiply it by something, so it gets bigger. It goes to the right on the number line. Factors are all equal to or less than the number. So factors of 24 have to be 24 or less. Hope that makes some sense. We'll obviously continue to work on that in class together. So let's take a look at some examples. Okay, if we wanted to find the GCF, which is what it's typically called, greatest common factor of, let's say, 30 and 50. One of the ways we can do that is we can create a factor tree for both. So we could say we'll put 30 over here, we'll put 50 over here. And I always just start with the lowest number. I always start with 1. So I know 1 times 30 gives me 30, right? And so those connect. 2 goes into 30 15 times, so 2 times 15. 3 goes into 30 10 times, so we have 3 times 10. 4 does not go into 30. 5 does go into 30. 5 times 6. And now my next number, I just said 5. My next number is 6, which I've already written down, so that's where I know I can stop, right? Once you hit a number that you've already said, you can stop. So those are my factors. All of these numbers here are factors of 30. That's only half the work, though. now I've got to do my factors of 50. So I'm going to start with 1 and 50. I know 2 goes into 50 25 times. 3 does not go into 50 because I know 3 times 10 is 30. And then from 30 to 50 is 20, and 3 does not go into 20 evenly. 4 is not a factor of 50 because 4 times 10 is 40. 4 times 11 is 44. 4 times 12 is 48. 4 times 13 is 52. So it skips 50. It skips 50. I do know that 5 times 10 is 50. 6 is not a factor. 7, 8, and 9 are not factors. So now I'm at 10, which I already have written down, so I can stop right there. So when I look at the factors that they have in common, they have, whoops, I kind of messed that up. They have 1 in common. They have 2 in common. They have 5 in common. They have 10 in common. And that's it. That's all the numbers they have in common. So 1, 2, 5, and 10 are all common factors, CF, but we're looking for GCF. We're looking for the greatest common factor. So the highest number of all of those is 10. So the greatest common factor of 30 and 50 is 10. All right, let's do one more example. Okay, let's find the greatest common factor of, let's go 30 and 45. So I'm going to show you, this is basically the exact same method, but in the past one, in the last example, we did factored trees, which go up and down. In this example, we'll do factor rainbows, is what you can call them. But this is basically, looks like the same format that we did when we did least common multiple. So I'm going to say 30, and I'm going to say 45. And so I know that 1 times 30 is 30. I know 2 times 15 is 30. I know 3 times 10 is 30. I know 4 does not go into 30. 5 does go into 30. 5 times 6. And now my next number I want to look at is 6, but it's already up there. Oh, sorry, I hit the wrong button. It's already up there, so I'm done. Once you get to a number that you've already written on the board, you are done. So another thing I want to point out, you'll notice that I'm putting commas between each number. That's just because if you don't put the commas there and the numbers are too close, they kind of start to bleed together, and so it's easier to keep track of what numbers you're looking at if you have commas in between. Okay, so now let's do factors of 45. I'm going to say, obviously 1 times 45 is going to be 45. 2 does not go into 45 because 45 ends in a 5, right? It doesn't end in an even number. That's where some of those divisibility rules come in handy. 3, 4 plus 5 is 9, so I know it is divisible by 3, right? 3 and 15. 4 does not go into 45. 5 does go into 45 because I know that's a math fact. 5 times 9 is 45. 6 does not go into 45. 7 does not go into 45. 8 does not go into 45. 9 does go into 45, but I already have it written down, so that means I am done. Greatest common factor, it really helps if you know those math facts, okay? I mean, it's just easier. It just is. So let's look at the common factors. 1 is a common factor. 3 is a common factor. 5 is a common factor. 6 is not. 10 is not. 15 is a common factor. 30 is not. 45 is not. So then the greatest common factor, there's 1, 3, 5, and 15 are all factors that they have in common, but the greatest of those, the biggest number, is 15. So the greatest common factor of 30 and 45 is then 15. Okay, I'm going to stop there. We'll do some more examples in class, and we'll talk about how this can kind of relate to fraction work and some of the different things that we're going to work on coming up and some of the things that we've worked on in the past. And least common multiple and greatest common factor do come in handy quite a bit. So we'll talk about that. Thank you for watching. We'll talk to you soon.